ladies. Welcome back to Happiest Sober podcast. I'm Madeline. Thank you so much for being here. I am so freaking excited as I'm recording this episode because in just a couple days, I'm flying to Chicago for an in-person meetup with the Happiest Sober Hub. So 19 of my members are going to be there, and oh my God, I could not be more excited to get to meet so many of them in person. And a few of the members who are joining us came last year to our in-person meetup in Denver. So I'll get to see those members again. And oh my gosh, I just know it's going to be such an incredible weekend. So I can't wait to share a little bit with you next week about how it goes. But on to what I'm going to be chatting about in today's episode, which is something that, I think it'll be a fairly quick episode, but I thought this was really worth talking about because it's actually been coming up quite a bit lately with members of the Happiest Sober Hub. It's something that I've been talking a lot about in meetings lately. And it's something that I also really struggled with in my earlier sobriety as well. And so, what that is having a moment where you really want to drink or you romanticize drinking or you're kind of missing drinking in that moment, and then believing that that is a failure in your sobriety, believing like not drinking through it, getting through it without drinking, but then still feeling like, oh, I feel disappointed in myself because I had that moment of wanting to drink, or feeling like it's a failure, feeling that sense of disappointment, feeling like I shouldn't have those moments. I shouldn't have thoughts about drinking. I shouldn't have those moments of wanting to drink. And so I want to talk about this today because I definitely felt that a lot in my early sobriety as well. Even I can think of a time, and I think I might have shared this story on the podcast before, but I remember that I was like 2 years sober. And I think the other thing too is that oftentimes those feelings of, I don't know if I want to call it shame or just kind of that feeling of being hard on yourself and feeling like you've done something bad or wrong for having those thoughts and feelings can be magnified if you're a bit further in your journey and maybe you haven't had a moment like that in a long time. It can almost like shake you a little bit more in that case when it comes up, because then you have this thought of like, oh my God, I was doing so well and I haven't thought about it in so long. Why is this happening? Why am I having this thought? And then again, kind of just beating yourself up about it, right? So I remember being like 2 years sober, and I was in, a steady place where I hardly ever had moments of romanticizing or wanting to drink. But I went out with my sister, and I like was pretty social and went out a fair bit in my kind of first, my earlier sobriety. I've talked quite a lot about that. But it was my first time ever out in sort of like a different environment. Like it wasn't like going out to even like a pub or a bar and then like sitting at a table. It was kind of my first time being out where there weren't any seats and we were all kind of like standing around the bar. And it definitely made me think about my drinking days. It was my first time being in a situation like that sober. And I was so caught off guard by how much it made me just miss it, how much it made me wish I could be ordering alcohol from the bartender, right? And I felt so disappointed in myself. I was like, what is wrong with me? I shouldn't be having these thoughts. I shouldn't be having these feelings. I'm this far in. I've been doing so well, right? So I absolutely understand having those thoughts. And I was the exact same way where I would kind of beat myself up for having those moments. But what I want to say, what I say to my members, and what I would say if I could go back in time to myself is that that is absolutely part of the process of getting sober. It is the most normal thing in the entire world when you are letting go of something that was once a really big part of your life to have those moments of missing it. Not to mention the fact that it is an addictive substance, right? So we're letting go of that. But even if maybe you've got a bit of time under your belt and then you're kind of caught off guard of like, oh my God, I had this moment of kind of missing drinking, to remember that alcohol is something that we really have to grieve, and grief is not linear. It's something that you might feel like, okay, I'm in such a good spot and I'm not really thinking about it. And then maybe something happens that brings back a memory, or you're in a situation you haven't been in sober yet and you don't have those sober experiences of it. it's the most normal thing in the world for those moments to come up, and it is not a failure in our sobriety. And what I always really, really like to say is that, it's so, it's one thing to stay sober when it feels easy and when life feels good. Like, that's of course a win. Staying sober is a win regardless. But, the fact that we kind of want to classify, oh, I had a hard moment of wanting to drink, that feels like a failure in my sobriety. It's like, that's the opposite. That is where you get to show yourself that you're committed. That's when you're freaking doing it more than anything, is when you have that moment of, I really want to drink, and you don't pick up that freaking drink. We need to flip that. Like, it's not a failure or something that we need to feel disappointed in ourselves about. It's, oh my God, I had a moment of wanting to drink and I didn't do it. And that is a win, because that is the work of getting sober. And so we can't expect perfection of ourselves to never miss it, right? Like, if it was the easiest thing in the world to just get sober, stop drinking, and then just never think about it or never miss it again, we wouldn't need sober communities. We wouldn't need support groups. We wouldn't need sober podcasts. We wouldn't need all of that, right? Like, we all know logically that it's a hard thing to do. That's no secret. And so you could even frame it this way of like, having to experience that feeling of wanting to drink is evidence that I'm freaking doing it. Because what's the alternative? If you're not feeling the feeling of wanting to drink, maybe it's because you're giving in and drinking, right? Because I'm willing to bet that if you're here listening to this and you have gotten sober, it's because alcohol was something that you struggled with in some way, no matter what your relationship was with it, right? You identified that it wasn't serving you, that maybe you had an unhealthy, problematic relationship with it. You were drinking more than you wanted to. And we can't expect to stop drinking and then never have thoughts of doing it, right? It is the most normal thing in the world to miss it. And so we don't have to beat ourselves up for having those moments. Something else that is really, really has been a really helpful reminder for me, and that I always remind people in these moments as well, is that we don't have control over the first thoughts that come into our brain. Like, we can't control the thoughts that come in, but we have all the control in the world over what we do with the thoughts, over how we respond to them. And I like to think, that kind of initial first thought is our habit of thought, is even like conditioned thoughts, right? Just like if you're in a situation that normally you'd be drinking in, your brain might immediately just associate that with alcohol, and those thoughts come in of maybe missing it, romanticizing it. And that's just because that's your habit of thought, and you don't have control over that coming in. And so you don't need to, again, beat yourself up for that. But now, where we get to step into our power is in recognizing, okay, this thought has come in. I'm having a hard moment. I can practice so much compassion for myself in that, because nothing's gone wrong. This is absolutely a part of the process. That's to be expected. But now I get to choose how I respond to it. And that's when you get to play the tape forward. That's when you get to remember your why. That's when you get to reach out for accountability and support from your sober community. That's when, right? That's when you get to really lean on all your tools. And then that is how we step into our power. And that is how we turn a hard moment into a sober win, because it absolutely is a freaking sober win to have a hard moment, to think about drinking, to miss it, and then to stay sober through it, and then to not drink through it, right? So if you've gotten sober, the goal doesn't have to be, okay, I'm never gonna miss drinking. Like, my measure of success, or my measure of how well I'm doing in sobriety, is if I'm not thinking about drinking, I'm not missing it, right? Like, that's not the measure of success. The measure of success is how we show up for ourselves through those moments, because when we get sober, it's inevitable that we're going to have those moments. It is a process. It is a big change. Even if you're, a year in and you've been feeling solid, maybe you're going to encounter a situation you haven't encountered, or maybe you're going to encounter a situation that really brings back a memory, and those thoughts and feelings might come up, and we don't have to make ourselves feel worse by telling ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm bad for feeling this way. I'm not supposed to think about drinking anymore, right? We get to just acknowledge it, sit with it, right? Let ourselves sit with it. Let ourselves say, okay, this is bringing some stuff up for me. Maybe it's bringing up a little bit more of my grieving process. Maybe I'm romanticizing, but now I have power in how I'm going to choose to respond to this. And that is how we absolutely turn it into a sober win. And I think something else to really remember is that, if maybe you're in a situation where you've been feeling really good for a while and you've gone like maybe a few months without really thinking about drinking, and you haven't had those moments of missing it, and then you have that moment. And so you're kind of like, what the hell? I was doing so well. It's still a huge sign of growth that you went however long and had been feeling strong and good. That's still a huge sign of growth. And having this moment come back up doesn't take away from that. And you know what else? So, a question that I often get, like if I, do a question box on Instagram, a Q&A, or just sometimes I get DMs saying like, when does it get easier? When do you stop thinking about drinking so much? And I always find that question difficult to answer, because the truth is, it's not that you just wake up one day and all of a sudden you're not thinking about drinking anymore and you're not missing it. The truth is that the shift happens gradually. And what happens is those moments get less and less and less. They get more and more spaced out. So if you've gone months without it being an issue, without missing it, and then you have that moment, rather than thinking about it as like, oh my gosh, I've taken a step backwards or I've regressed, you can celebrate, wait, this is actually a win because I haven't had it in a while. And that just goes to show that these moments are getting more and more spaced out and they're becoming less and less. And I think the other really, helpful thing to recognize is to really compare your growth in terms of, if I had a moment in my earlier sobriety of missing drinking, it could like take me down emotionally for a whole day. Even like I've had hard times that have lingered for a few days, where it's really kind of shaken me and put me in this space of missing drinking for a few days, and kind of having to get myself out of that space, right? And reminder, it always passes. But to really recognize that, okay, maybe this moment I'm having of really missing drinking, or I had a moment of romanticizing it, maybe this would have lasted a lot longer if it happened in like month one of my sobriety. Maybe it would have kind of taken me down and made me sad for a lot of today. And notice that as time goes on, when those moments do come up, they pass quicker, right? Like that's what I really found as well, is that the more sober time I got, and to just add to that, the way to get to the place where you don't really think about drinking or don't really miss it anymore is by staying sober through the moments of missing it, right? Like that is actually, we all kind of want that. We want to be in that place when we first start out of like, oh, I should just be able to have fun and not think about it, right? But when you're having that hard moment where you're maybe not having fun, or you are thinking about it, to remember that like, okay, getting through these moments is how I strengthen my sober muscle, and that's how I actually am building towards getting to the place where I'm not really going to be thinking about it, right? So even just remember that when those moments come up, you are freaking doing it. You're doing the work. You're showing up for yourself through the hard moment of wanting to drink. You're not drinking through it. You're leaning on your tools. So that's how you really do get to that place. But then what happens is the more and more you do that, the easier it becomes then, when a moment comes up again of missing drinking, to notice it and to let it pass easier. And it becomes kind of this sort of muscle memory of like, okay, I can recognize this feeling, but I'm not going to act on it, and I know that it's going to pass. And so what I definitely found is that the further I got, when I would have those moments of missing drinking or romanticizing it, it didn't shake me in the same way anymore. It was like, okay, I can notice that that's coming up, and I'm gonna like, my sobriety is a non-negotiable for me. I'm gonna stay sober through it, and I know it will pass, and then it always does, right? So if you've gone a bit and haven't thought about drinking, and then you're having a moment of thinking about it and you feel disappointed in yourself, or you're telling yourself, I shouldn't feel this way, just remember the work of sobriety, the work of getting ourselves sober, is we have to just accept that we are going to have those moments, and that is absolutely okay. But staying sober through them is how we end up getting to the place where they just become less and less and less, and when they do come up, they don't take us down in the same way, right? And I'll say, I'm turning 5 years sober in a couple of months, and I hardly ever have moments of like romanticizing or missing drinking. And I shared this in an episode a few months ago, but I went away to an all-inclusive for the first time a few months ago. So it was a sober first, and what I noticed was, my first day there, it made me feel like a little nostalgic for my drinking days, which I hadn't really experienced that feeling in a little bit, because I really have gotten to this place where I'm so happy with my sobriety. I don't really ever wish I was drinking, but being there was like, okay, this is different. Like I had only done all inclusives as a drinker, as someone who was there to like heavily drink. And that was kind of the whole point of the trip. So I had these thoughts of like, okay, so this is where my old self would be so excited right now to be heading to the bar and have mimosas all day and all of that. And so those feelings of kind of nostalgia came up just the first day there walking around, and then that was it. And I didn't make it mean anything. I didn't let it take me down into, oh my god, I wish I was doing that, I missed that, right? It was kind of just noticing that feeling come up. But at this point in my sobriety, I can just go, okay, and now I'm here doing it differently. And now I know that every single sober experience of things that like my old self would have made all about drinking, those experiences without fail have all turned out to be so much better in sobriety. And I always end up with like such a dose of intense sober joy and gratitude after. And that was what happened with the all inclusive. It was like that first day, like, okay, I'm here doing it in a really different way than I've ever done it before. And then by, even just a little bit later that day, I was having so many moments of like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that I get to be here and be sober and present for it. And, waking up and having my early morning coffee on the beach, if you're interested more in like the sober all inclusive thing, you can go back, scroll back to that episode. It would have come out in April of this year. But just an example of the fact that like with time, things that would have felt really hard in the early days, it just shifts over time. But we don't have to expect perfection of ourselves. We don't have to have that black and white thinking, especially if you're in, your first year or even your second year of sobriety. It is okay to still have those moments of missing it. It's not a failure in your sobriety. It's actually a win, because that is you doing the work of staying sober. Doing the work of staying sober means when you're making the change, you're going to want to drink and you're going to rely on your tools to stay sober through those moments. And so next time you have a moment of thinking about drinking, I know it's summertime, that can be a really challenging time. Rather than beating yourself up and feeling like, oh, I feel disappointed in myself because I had those thoughts and I shouldn't be thinking about it, flip it and say, that was an extra sober win because I did something hard in that moment. And that is just so important to always celebrate ourselves for that, as much as doing something sober and having a great time, which often is going to happen too. But like, just like doing something sober that maybe you were nervous about, and then getting to the other side and going like, oh my God, that went so much better than I expected, and I had a really great time, is a huge sober win and something worth celebrating. On the flip side, doing something sober and having a challenging time or a hard moment and staying sober through it, that is equally something to celebrate and feel proud of. So I just really wanted to share this reminder, because it's definitely something I've heard quite a lot, is people feeling down on themselves and disappointed in themselves when they have those moments. And it's not anything we need to beat ourselves up for. It is a completely natural, normal part of the process. And if you're staying sober through those moments, you're absolutely freaking doing it, and you deserve to be really proud of yourself rather than rather than beating yourself up for it. So I hope this episode was a helpful one. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated, feel free to share it on social media and tag me. Also, check out my community, the Happiest Sober Hub. If you're looking for any extra support on your sober journey, I'd love to have you there. You can head to happiestsober.com/hub to check it out, and subscribe to my weekly newsletter for free sober tips and inspo right to your inbox at happiestsober.com. New episodes come out every Tuesday, so I'll chat with you next week. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember that life's happiest when you're sober. Bye.